Chosen one, listen carefully. This message is not random, and this moment is not accidental. If you are hearing these words right now, understand this clearly: your awareness has reached a level that threatens hidden systems built on secrecy and control. You didn't go looking for truth, yet truth found you. That is why resistance has shown up. That is why certain doors closed, certain people pulled away, and certain energies turned against you. It's not because you're wrong, it's because you're seeing what was never meant to be exposed. For a long time, you felt pressure without explanation. Confusion without clarity. Opposition without cause. But now God is revealing the reason. You carry discernment. You question what others blindly accept. You see patterns others refuse to acknowledge. And systems that survive on silence fear those who walk in truth. This isn't about hate, it's about exposure. When light enters hidden rooms, shadows panic. You were tested, delayed, and challenged not to break you, but to sharpen you. Every setback trained your spirit. Every betrayal refined your vision. You were never meant to fit into their structure. You were designed to outgrow it. That's why conformity never worked for you. That's why your spirit always resisted being boxed in. You are not here to serve a system, you are here to outgrow it and move beyond it. This moment marks a shift. Fear is losing its grip. Confusion is lifting. Your discernment is activating fully. What once felt heavy now feels clear. What once felt intimidating now feels exposed. This is not rebellion, it is awakening. And awakenings always unsettle those who benefit from sleep. So don't doubt what you're sensing. Don't silence what you know. You are protected, guided, and positioned for a higher understanding. This message reached you because you are ready to see without fear and move without permission. Something has already shifted in your favor. Before you go any further into this video, you must do 3 things to align with this truth. First, like this video to acknowledge the message. Then leave a comment saying, "I walk in truth without fear." And finally, send your signal by subscribing to the channel, so you stay connected as more is revealed. You were never meant to stay asleep. You were never meant to stay asleep, and that truth has been quietly guiding you since the beginning of your life. Even when you were young, there was something different about the way you looked at the world. While others accepted things simply because that's how it's always been, you felt a subtle resistance inside. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet feeling that something didn't fully add up. You noticed contradictions. You sensed when rules were followed out of fear instead of understanding. You didn't always have words for it, but your inner voice kept nudging you to look deeper. This wasn't about being difficult or trying to stand out. In fact, many times you probably wished you could just fit in and move on like everyone else. But your mind wouldn't shut down, and your heart wouldn't ignore what it felt. You questioned authority not because you wanted to challenge it, but because you wanted it to make sense. You didn't reject tradition for the sake of rebellion, you simply wanted truth to be real, not just repeated. That's an important difference, and it's one many people never understand. As you grew older, this awareness became stronger. You began to see how certain systems survive not because they are right, but because people are afraid to question them. Silence, you realized, is often rewarded more than honesty. Obedience is praised more than understanding. And slowly, you recognize that many structures are held together by habit and fear rather than wisdom. This realization didn't make life easier. In many ways, it made things heavier, because once you see clearly, you can't unsee. You may have felt pressure to quiet yourself, to stop asking questions, to just go with the flow. Sometimes that pressure came from society, sometimes from family, sometimes even from within yourself. But every time you tried to ignore what you knew, something felt off. That's because your awareness isn't a personality trait, it's part of who you are. It comes from your soul, not your ego. It's not about proving others wrong, it's about staying honest with yourself. When someone begins to wake up like this, systems that depend on silence feel uncomfortable. They don't always react openly. Sometimes the resistance shows up as subtle pushback, confusion, delays, or being misunderstood. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because clarity disrupts illusion. Discernment doesn't attack, it reveals. And anything built on illusion becomes unstable when seen clearly. Your questioning nature is not a flaw that needs fixing. It's a form of inner guidance. It helps you move through life with awareness instead of blind belief. You were never meant to live on autopilot. You were meant to stay conscious, grounded, and awake, walking forward with understanding, even when the path feels different from the crowd. Your discomfort was a signal, not a weakness. Your discomfort was never a weakness, it was a signal trying to protect you. There were times when you walked into certain places, sat with certain people, or became part of certain conversations, and everything seemed fine on the surface. People were smiling, the rules were clear, and nothing appeared wrong. Yet inside, something felt off. A tightness in your chest. A quiet urge to pull back. A feeling that didn't make logical sense but refused to go away. That wasn't anxiety, and it wasn't overthinking. It was your inner awareness responding to what your eyes couldn't immediately explain. Many people feel that same discomfort at some point in their lives, but they learn to silence it. They tell themselves they're being dramatic, sensitive, or paranoid. Over time, they train themselves to ignore that inner warning because fitting in feels safer than listening inward. You didn't do that. Even when you tried to brush it off, the feeling returned. Not louder, not aggressive, just persistent. That persistence is important. It shows that your inner guidance system stayed active when others shut theirs down. You were able to sense when words didn't match intentions. When authority was being used to control rather than guide. When rules existed to benefit a few while limiting many. You noticed when loyalty was demanded instead of earned, and when silence was expected instead of honesty. None of this made you superior, it simply made you aware. Awareness often feels uncomfortable at first because it separates you from the illusion of safety that blind obedience provides. That's why blending in never fully worked for you. You may have played along on the outside, followed the motions, or tried to adapt, but inwardly you stayed alert. You couldn't fully relax in environments where truth felt filtered or behavior felt rehearsed. This doesn't mean you're antisocial or distrustful by nature. It means your spirit values authenticity over approval. You prefer clarity over comfort, even when clarity costs you belonging. Over time, you may have questioned yourself. You may have wondered why you couldn't just settle, accept, or stop feeling uneasy when others seemed fine. But the truth is, your design is different. You weren't meant to dissolve into systems that rely on unconscious obedience. You weren't created to function best in spaces where people are rewarded for not thinking and punished for asking questions. Your discomfort has always been a form of quiet intelligence. It helped you avoid manipulation before it became obvious. It kept you from attaching yourself too deeply to structures that would have drained you. It nudged you to step back before compromising your values. What felt like unease was actually alignment trying to keep you intact. Now, as you look back, you can see that those moments of discomfort weren't random interruptions, they were guidance. They kept you from losing yourself. They reminded you to trust what you feel, even when you can't fully explain it yet. That sensitivity is not something to get rid of. It's something to respect. They don't hate you personally, they fear exposure. They don't hate you personally, even though at times it may feel very personal. The resistance, tension, or coldness you sense is not really about your personality, your behavior, or anything you intentionally did. It's about what you represent. You carry a kind of awareness that quietly unsettles environments built on control, secrecy, or unspoken rules. You don't need to confront anyone or expose anything out loud, your presence alone brings clarity. And clarity makes unstable systems uncomfortable. You see things beneath the surface. Where others see titles, symbols, or authority, you instinctively look for substance. You notice when respect is demanded rather than earned, when traditions are repeated without meaning, and when power is maintained through fear instead of integrity. This doesn't mean you're obsessed with uncovering secrets, it means your mind naturally looks for truth instead of appearance. That ability is rare, and it often goes unappreciated in spaces that rely on illusion to function smoothly. When someone like you enters such spaces, reactions begin. Sometimes it shows up as subtle distancing. Sometimes as being misunderstood, dismissed, or quietly opposed. You may notice that people become defensive around you without knowing why. That's because awareness doesn't need permission to exist. It doesn't argue or force, it simply reveals. And once something is seen clearly, it can no longer hide behind performance or authority. Think of it like light entering a dark room. The light isn't aggressive. It doesn't attack the darkness or make demands. It just shows what's already there. And darkness reacts not because it's being harmed, but because it's being exposed. In the same way, your clarity disrupts comfort zones that depend on people not asking questions or not noticing contradictions. You don't have to say anything for that disruption to happen, it's energetic, subtle, and unavoidable. This is why attempts may be made to minimize you, distract you, or make you doubt yourself. If your awareness can be shaken, the system remains safe. But if you stay grounded, calm, and observant, false structures begin to weaken on their own. That's why accountability feels threatening in certain environments. It removes the shield of silence and forces truth into the open. It's important to understand this so you don't internalize the resistance as rejection. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not too much, too intense, or out of place. You simply carry discernment into spaces that benefit from people not seeing clearly. That doesn't make you an enemy, it makes you honest. You're not here to fight anyone or tear anything down. Your role is quieter than that. By staying true, aware, and aligned, you naturally question what isn't real. And systems that lack integrity always struggle in the presence of truth, even when that truth says nothing at all. Your delays were part of divine protection. Your delays were never signs that you were failing or falling behind. They were part of a quiet protection working in your favor, even when it didn't feel that way at the time. There were moments when you were ready to move forward, when you felt prepared, hopeful, and willing, yet something stalled. Opportunities slowed down. Plans paused. Doors that looked certain suddenly closed. Naturally, you questioned yourself. You wondered what you were doing wrong or why things weren't moving as fast as they seemed to for others. But those pauses were not setbacks. They were shields. If everything had moved quickly, you might have stepped into spaces that looked promising on the surface but would have slowly drained you. Some environments reward speed but punish awareness. God knew that your spirit needed space to grow stronger before being placed in positions of influence. Rushing you into the wrong structure would have cost you your clarity, your peace, and your authenticity. So time stepped in, not to delay your destiny, but to protect it. During those waiting seasons, something important was happening inside you. Your discernment was sharpening. Your patience was deepening. You were learning how to observe rather than react, how to listen rather than rush, and how to trust inner guidance over external pressure. These are not skills you gain in fast success. They are built slowly, quietly, often in moments that feel unproductive on the outside but are transformative on the inside. You were also being taught how to stand independently. Instead of becoming dependent on systems, titles, or approval, you were learning to trust your own grounding. Standing outside gave you perspective. You could see how certain structures operated, what they demanded, and what they took in return. This awareness would not have been possible if you had been fully absorbed inside them too early. Timing mattered more than you realized. Your position couldn't change until your awareness matured enough to handle it. Influence without clarity can compromise you. Access without wisdom can trap you. God delayed the outer movement until your inner foundation was stable. What felt like waiting was actually preparation for longevity. Looking back now, you can probably see moments where a delay saved you from exhaustion, regret, or entanglement. Something that once felt disappointing later revealed itself as a blessing. You avoided paths that would have limited you. You were redirected away from roles that would have silenced your intuition. That wasn't luck, it was guidance. These delays also taught you how to stay steady without constant reassurance. You learned how to keep moving inwardly even when nothing seemed to change outwardly. That strength is rare. It allows you to move forward now without panic, without desperation, and without selling parts of yourself just to advance. Nothing was wasted. Every pause had a purpose. Every closed door kept you aligned. You weren't being held back, you were being preserved. And now, as things begin to move, you carry a level of awareness that protects you wherever you go. You see patterns others refuse to see. You see patterns that many people choose not to see, not because they lack intelligence, but because seeing clearly often requires courage. While others are busy chasing visible success, titles, recognition, status, and approval, you naturally look beneath the surface. You pay attention to how things actually work, not just how they are presented. You notice who benefits from certain rules, who holds real influence behind the scenes, and who remains silent even when something feels wrong. This way of seeing isn't learned from books, it comes from awareness. You understand that power doesn't always announce itself loudly. Often, it hides behind routines, traditions, or unspoken expectations. You notice when fear is subtly used to keep people in line, fear of losing belonging, respect, or security. You can sense when authority is maintained not through wisdom or fairness, but through pressure and compliance. Many people feel these things but push them aside because acknowledging them would disrupt their sense of stability. You don't ignore them. You pause and reflect. This ability doesn't make life simpler. In fact, it often complicates things. You can't fully enjoy surface-level wins when you see the cost beneath them. You can't blindly celebrate systems that succeed by silencing others. At times, this makes you feel out of place, even lonely, because your focus isn't on appearance, it's on integrity. You'd rather understand the truth than be comforted by illusion. You also recognize how tradition can be misused. While tradition can offer wisdom and continuity, you see when it's repeated without purpose, used to shut down questions, or employed to justify unfairness. You notice when "this is how it's always been done" becomes a way to avoid accountability. This awareness doesn't mean you reject everything old, it means you value meaning over habit. Because you see patterns, you move differently. You're cautious about where you invest your energy, your time, and your loyalty. You don't rush into alliances just because they look impressive. You watch how people act when no one is applauding them. You observe how systems respond to honesty versus obedience. This makes you grounded, not cynical. Truth has a quiet strength. It doesn't need to shout, but it can't be ignored forever. That's why false power structures feel threatened by people like you. You don't attack them, you simply see through them. And once something is clearly seen, it loses the ability to manipulate. Over time, this pattern recognition becomes a form of inner stability. You trust yourself. You don't get easily swayed by trends, pressure, or appearances. You understand that real success isn't just about rising, it's about rising without losing your clarity. And that kind of truth always reshapes whatever it touches, whether people are ready for it or not. Your isolation refined your vision. Your isolation was never meant to break you, it was meant to refine you. There were periods in your life when connections faded, conversations changed, and people you once felt close to no longer understood you. At times, it felt confusing and painful. You may have wondered what you did wrong or why relationships that once felt solid slowly drifted apart. But that distance was not a punishment. It was a necessary space created so your vision could become clearer. When noise fades, clarity grows. In those quieter seasons, without constant opinions, expectations, or advice coming from all directions, you finally had room to hear yourself. Your intuition, which had always been there, became stronger because it was no longer competing with outside voices. You learned the difference between what you truly felt and what others expected you to feel. That distinction is powerful. It changes how you make decisions and how you see the world. Being alone forced you to sit with your thoughts instead of escaping them. You began to notice patterns in your own behavior, your reactions, and your values. You recognized which beliefs were truly yours and which ones you had adopted just to belong. This kind of self-honesty doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in silence. And silence, though uncomfortable at first, became your teacher. You also learned that approval is not the same as truth. When external validation faded, you had to decide whether you trusted yourself enough to keep going without reassurance. Slowly, you did. You stopped needing people to agree with you in order to believe what you knew. This didn't make you stubborn, it made you grounded. You became less reactive and more certain, even without applause. This shift is subtle but transformative. When a person no longer depends on approval, manipulation loses its grip. Systems that rely on praise, fear, or rejection to control behavior start to weaken. They work best when people are uncertain and constantly seeking validation. Your isolation quietly removed that dependence. You learned to stand steady without being held up by others. Over time, this inner stability changed how you show up. You became calmer, more observant, and less eager to explain yourself. You didn't need to convince anyone anymore. You simply knew. And knowing doesn't demand attention, it carries quiet confidence. What once felt like loneliness now reveals itself as preparation. You were being taught how to trust your own clarity. How to listen inwardly. How to move without needing constant confirmation. That refined vision is something no one can take from you. It allows you to walk forward with certainty, even when the path is quiet and misunderstood by others. Judgment begins with awareness, not punishment. Judgment does not begin with punishment or blame, it begins with awareness. This is something many people misunderstand. When truth starts to surface, it isn't about attacking individuals or tearing others down. It's about clarity. It's about allowing people to see what has always been there but was hidden, ignored, or covered up by fear, habit, or convenience. Awareness doesn't force anyone to change, it simply gives them the chance to choose honestly. When deception exists, control feels strong. People follow rules, systems, or leaders because they don't have the full picture. Once awareness enters, that control weakens naturally. No arguments are required. No confrontations are necessary. Seeing clearly changes everything. When someone understands how something works, they can no longer be manipulated by it in the same way. That is why awareness is so powerful, it shifts behavior from the inside, not through pressure from the outside. This kind of judgment is quiet. It doesn't shout or accuse. It reveals. It allows people to recognize what aligns with their values and what doesn't. Some will walk away. Some will stay and adjust. Some will resist. All of these reactions are part of free will. Awareness doesn't demand agreement, it offers understanding. And understanding cannot be reversed once it's genuinely received. Your role in this process is not to fight or destroy systems, people, or beliefs. You are not here to create chaos or conflict. You are here to hold clarity. To live in truth. To ask honest questions and move with integrity. Awakening isn't about tearing down walls, it's about turning on the light so people can see the walls for themselves. What they do after that is their choice. This is why awakening feels disruptive to those who benefit from blindness. Not because awareness is aggressive, but because it removes the advantage of secrecy. When people stop acting out of fear or habit, systems built on control lose their grip. That loss of control can feel threatening to those who relied on it. But that reaction is not your responsibility. Awareness also brings responsibility. Once you see clearly, you move differently. You become more intentional, more grounded, and less reactive. You stop participating in things that don't align with your values. You stop supporting what requires deception to survive. This isn't judgment in the traditional sense, it's alignment. True judgment doesn't punish. It clarifies. It creates space for honesty, choice, and growth. And while not everyone will welcome that clarity, it is necessary for real freedom. Awakening may disturb comfort, but it restores truth. And truth, once revealed, quietly reshapes everything it touches. Fear is leaving because truth is anchoring. Fear is leaving your life because truth is slowly anchoring you from within. Things that once felt overwhelming no longer carry the same weight. Situations that used to trigger anxiety now feel manageable. It's not that challenges disappeared, it's that your inner response changed. When truth settles in the mind, it brings stability. You begin to see reality as it is, not as it's exaggerated through fear, pressure, or noise. Before, certain symbols, titles, or authority figures may have felt intimidating. You might have questioned your worth around them or felt small in their presence. Now, those same things appear different. Not because they lost all importance, but because you see them clearly. You understand that authority is only meaningful when it's grounded in integrity. You recognize that loud voices are not always strong, and confidence doesn't need to announce itself. This shift doesn't make you arrogant, it makes you balanced. One of the biggest changes is how you respond. You no longer react immediately to every situation. You pause. You observe. You allow yourself to understand before responding. This creates space between what happens and how you act. In that space, fear loses its power. Panic thrives on urgency and confusion. Calm grows where clarity exists. And clarity is built through truth. Truth has a grounding effect. It steadies your thoughts and quiets emotional extremes. When you know what you stand for, external chaos doesn't shake you as easily. You're not pulled in every direction by opinions, expectations, or threats. You're anchored. And when you're anchored, you don't need to prove anything. You simply move with intention. This calm doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you've stopped overreacting. You've learned that not everything deserves your energy. You choose where to focus. You conserve your strength. You let go of what tries to scare you into submission. This is a form of inner authority, one that doesn't rely on control, force, or noise. Real power is often misunderstood. It's not loud. It doesn't dominate. It doesn't need constant validation. Real power is steady. It allows you to stay grounded even when others are unsettled. It helps you see through exaggeration and manipulation without becoming bitter or defensive. As fear continues to fade, trust takes its place. Trust in your awareness. Trust in your ability to navigate challenges. Trust in the truth you carry. This doesn't make life perfect, but it makes you resilient. You move forward with clarity instead of panic, observation instead of reaction, and confidence instead of fear. And that quiet strength is unshakable. You are protected to walk forward without permission. You are protected to walk forward without permission, even when no one claps, agrees, or fully understands your path. For a long time, you may have waited for signs of approval. Someone to say yes, to confirm you were right, or to give you the green light to move. But the truth is, you were never meant to depend on permission to live honestly. When you move in truth, approval becomes optional. Your direction is guided from within, not by external authority. You don't need validation to trust what you sense. Your discernment has been built through experience, reflection, and awareness. It didn't come overnight, and it wasn't handed to you by anyone else. It grew through challenges, silence, and learning to listen inwardly. Because of that, it's steady. You don't need constant reassurance anymore. You know when something aligns and when it doesn't, even if you can't explain it to everyone. Protection doesn't always look like comfort. Often, it looks like clarity. God protects those who walk with clean intention by keeping them aware, grounded, and conscious. When your motives are clear, you're less likely to be pulled into situations that compromise you. You're guided away from traps, distractions, and paths that look successful but cost you your peace. This kind of protection works quietly, shaping your decisions before danger even appears. You are not here to fight systems or argue with structures that no longer fit. Fighting keeps you entangled. Outgrowing allows you to move on. When something is built on illusion, it eventually collapses on its own. You don't have to push it. You don't have to expose it loudly. Reality has a way of revealing what isn't stable. Your role is simply to not attach yourself to what's falling apart. Staying grounded means staying present. You don't rush ahead, and you don't cling to the past. You move forward with awareness, knowing that what's meant for you will meet you without force. You let your actions speak instead of explaining yourself repeatedly. You trust that consistency and integrity will make your path clear over time. As you walk forward, you may notice that some things fade naturally: old expectations, outdated roles, and unnecessary conflicts. This isn't loss, it's alignment. You're shedding what no longer serves your growth. You're stepping into a way of living that feels lighter, clearer, and more authentic. You don't need permission to be truthful. You don't need approval to be aligned. You are protected as you move forward with awareness, intention, and calm confidence. Let reality speak. Let time confirm what words never could.